Hello, welcome to Primis Presents AI Boardroom. This episode isn't about AI replacing people, it's about how people stay in the game. How do experienced creatives evolve when the tools change, but their title doesn't? I feel like creatives have always pushed back when new tools show up. So, Photoshop, After Effects, even PowerPoint had its moment, and now it's AI. Suddenly, we're asking ourselves, am I even still relevant? We're going to talk today about what it means to still be a creative when AI can spit out 100 headlines in a blink, and how experienced creatives evolve when the tools change but their title doesn't. My guest is David Shanks, Executive Creative Director at Oliver Agency, and today we're going to talk about how to keep your edge, your instinct, and your voice when the work, pace, and industry are all moving faster than you are. Welcome, David.
Hello.
Hello. How are you today?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. I'm interested to see what you're going to ask me.
Good. Glad to hear it. Well, you've been in the creative industry a very long time. How has the idea of staying relevant shifted over the years?
Look, I think we're in a we're in a completely new place. We've all been getting used to dealing with technology for about 25 years. The difference has been that largely we have been in control of the technology, so we're okay with, what it does for us. But now we're in this space suddenly where the technology, it appears, is controlling us, or we're going to a new place. And that's a scary place because, our imaginations and our minds tell us, excuse me, that we are now, less useful. So we have to recognize that. But I think you have to sort of say to yourself, that we have to find a position of partnership with the technology. And that's the kind of the exciting part. It can do a lot. What can we do? We kind of know what it's capable of. What we don't know is what we're going to do with it. But I think you have to kind of almost say to yourself that you have to change in your own way as much as the technology is changing, and that will create some relevancy for you. So, there are, situations where, it will do lots of things, but equally you've got to say to yourself, okay, what is my new changing role, in this world? And recognize, it's moving every day. So you almost can't overthink it. You can't sit here and think in 2 years' time I'll be replaced by a donut or something. You've got to say to yourself, okay, where do I fit in? How do I fit in?
Yeah.
And you have to be flexible with it. This has always been a dynamic, innovative, risky, fun, slightly crazy business. That's why we joined it. So this is just another thing that you have to kind of learn to work with.
Yeah, people seem a little bit scared of it, but in terms of, experience, do you feel like being experienced still carries weight in the AI era, or do you think we're seeing a shift in how the industry values that?
Yes, but I don't think you should sit there and say, hey, I'm experienced. I've learned so much over the past 5, 10, 20 years. It's about relevancy. You have to use your experience and your knowledge, and you have to be relevant. To me, experience is just not enough. It kind of drives me crazy. When I see, more experienced creative people saying, "Well, I've been in the business a long time, ergo, you're only useful if you're relevant." So you have to use that experience, to be useful to people.
No, I mean, have you had personal moments where you've questioned your own relevancy at all?
No, not really.
Good.
I think what you've got to do a little bit is the more experience you get, you've got to sort of you've got to narrow the things that people want to use you for. Let's say me, I'm an ECD. I'm good with young creatives. I'm good at building culture. I'm good with clients. I'm good at looking at briefs. I'm good at marshalling resources. Well, I should be, because I've been doing this a long time. But I'm equally good, I think, at coming up with ideas and being efficient. So in a fast-moving world, that's what people will come to me for, more or less. All the other stuff, they kind of, yes, they will use me for that, and they do use me for that. But ultimately, if you're in a corner, somebody will come to me because, I can deliver an idea quickly, and I think that's what you need to do a little bit. Is you can't always stay a generalist in a fast moving, changing world, because people kind of forget it.
Yeah.
So I've always managed to kind of, stay in the game, because it's a fast moving world, and I can deliver things quickly and efficiently, and hopefully effectively. You know, so for me, I mean, this sounds a bit silly, but I've always kind of thought that you need to think a bit like a freelancer, even if you're a full-time employee. If you're a freelancer, you're always worried about your next gig. You deliver more than you're asked for. You put in a bit more effort. And people use you again as a freelancer because of that. But you shouldn't lose that attitude, even if you're a full-time employee, because that's what will keep you. It's what we used to say: an ad a day keeps the sack away.
Yeah.
You have to produce. You have to be relevant.
Yeah. Well, I noticed recently that you guys Oliver put out a claymation style video about life from
Yeah,
Oliver EMEA. Yeah. Noticed it was
yeah,
built in 10 days, a pretty good
yeah,
case study in creative imagination and scalable tech,
yeah.
really.
Yeah. Well, the AI, stuff like that, it makes things come alive in your imagination. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah.
I've had millions of ideas where we didn't have the money, we didn't have the time. I've pitched ideas, to to clients that clearly weren't relevant or affordable. And we'd all come away depressed because we couldn't make them. Now, there's a claymation film, where we had a load of footage. We turned, the staff films into claymation. It was done in a very short space of time. It looks great,
Yeah.
and that to me is like, well, how cool is AI?
Yeah.
If
What
you
made
can
you go
do
the
that.
AI route in the end instead of using the usual talking heads?
Because everybody does it.
Yeah.
Everybody sits there and has video interviews of people, looking into the camera, talking about, how cool their agency is. Um, and it's a bit contrived. It's
Yeah.
a bit, AI gives you the chance to say, okay, let's make it out of paper cut. Let's make it out of claymation. Let's, whatever. I think you have to look at, for all the sort of worry about AI. I mean, that to me, these are just toys in the box,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you can do it faster, better, quicker.
Yeah.
More relevant for clients. What's not to like?
Well, you
Uh,
coming from a writing background, originally a copywriting background, how do you feel about the fact, when AI can generate 100 headlines instantly, what becomes the role of the creative?
you have to top it. I did a thing the other day where we were requiring some strategy, and we were requiring some ideas, and I was literally sitting in the car waiting for my wife, and I put the question into, ChatGPT, and within 10 minutes I got a strategy and I got a bunch of ideas, and I looked at it and I went, that's not bad. And I've been in meetings with real creators with heartbeats that have delivered the same kind of work, and it's taken us 3 months to deliver the same thing. So
Mm,
what I did with that was I threw that at our lot and said, okay, that's what the robots have done. What can you do?
yeah,
So what I'm saying is, you know, you can almost use AI to say, there's the prescribed approach. Now, let's top that. So that to me is using it in a positive way.
so like a benchmark.
Yeah, kind of.
Nice.
And you do, and I have to be honest, when our planners got hold of the brief, it was way better, which I'm glad about. So,
Yeah.
yes, it can come up with lines, but can it come up with human things? Can it come up with thoughts?
Hmm.
I don't know is the answer, but it's another form of competition. I think
Yeah.
AI is pushing us forward.
Do you think it actually speeds up the pitch process or just changes the kind of ideas that win?
Does it speed up the pitch process? At this stage, it might speed up parts of it. I'm sure it speeds up the deck part of it.
Yeah.
I haven't honestly yet seen people being replaced, elbowed out of the way completely by tech in every aspect of the business. And I think you have to, you need to be an optimist in this business. The business has always been risky. The business has always been unpredictable. The business has always been young. That's kind of why we joined it. So you need to learn to ride that a bit. And you need to look at your own strengths a little bit and say, okay, all right, what am I going to do in this world?
Um,
Be relevant.
do you think clients are expecting a real AI first approach, AI thinking in your proposals?
I think they're certainly expecting, not all of them, but I think they are expecting, AI to impact their businesses. They want speed. They want, more cost effectiveness. Whether or not the ideas will actually come through from a completely AI point of view, I don't think so at this stage. I'm not so sure. I think with agencies as well, our biggest competitors are like 14-year-old kids with laptops. They're not other agencies. My son's got a business. He probably will never use an agency because they deliver their own content. So agencies have to learn that, we're not, somebody said to me a long time ago that agencies are paralysed by the TV ad and the poster, advertising, as we used to call it in my day. I don't think that's so true, but I think there is a bit of a truth in that.
Yeah.
That, we still are hanging on by the fingernails as kind of corporate entities that seem to think that, we have a right to be at the table when the world is just a lot more instant. I think this is one of the reasons why Oliver has done so well, actually, is because it's never had the baggage. Never had the baggage of a previous agency. We kind of always have, sort of learnt to get to the next level and to be completely adaptable around, clients' needs and to collaborate with them. Agencies are traditionally, disruption, break
Yeah.
things, be different. I
Yeah.
think, honestly, I think that there's a book called The New Power, and it talks about it's not really about disruption anymore. It's about collaboration, and I think that's what it's about. Because we
Yeah.
only know so much.
Nice. I mean, do you think that most agencies are trying to adopt AI now or know what they're actually doing with it? And do you guys know what you're doing with it?
Well, I mean, I can only speak for us, but all of our creatives, all of our people are trained on pencil. We are very lucky.
Okay.
We were acquired by the Brand Tech Group, a few years ago. They are, 10 years ahead, or reported as 10 years ahead of other agencies in terms of brand tech. The culture is fully AI driven. So our people are, eating up the training and the application, and you can see it in the nature of the creative department. You can see more and more young kids, creative AI native,
Mm,
and a groundswell of, and we have a lot of training, a lot of talks, a lot of people talking about their own AI journeys, in Oliver. And I'm like, every time you see a film, you go, God, do we do that?
yeah.
We had a little thing where, one of the creative directors set a brief after a piece of quite intensive AI training to some young people. And he said, okay, I don't want to do nothing to do with advertising. I want you to create your own movie trailer. And
Nice.
one of our guys in Malaysia, it was like a sort of Last Emperor meets Game of Thrones epic movie Chinese trailer. It was fabulous. And this is just a young designer. And you kind of look at that and go, what? You know, don't tell me these kids are not enjoying AI,
Yeah,
because
they're
they
loving it.
are. They are loving it.
How do you upskill like the more experienced creatives without sort of denting their confidence around it? Because, like you said, you've got these kids coming in doing these cool things. How do you kind of bring it to the attention of everybody and say, look, got to get on board?
It's a good point, isn't it? Denting people's confidence. You can't, in our business, confidence is easily dented in not just in AI.
It's brutal.
Well, it can be. It can be brutal. It shouldn't be brutal. You shouldn't be horrible to people, but you do need to sort of say to people, look, get with the program. You need to get people. You need to get people into it. Myself, here's me. I'm a writer. I'm a sort of pretend art director. I'm a pretend film director. I'm a pretend typographer. So I'm now, coming up with my own visuals using Firefly, my little copywriter layouts, giving them to Brian Eagle, our head of design, who then rolls his, eyes at my work. But he gets a sense of what I'm trying to say, which I couldn't do before. So you think you have to say to older creatives, look, guys, you need to, these are ways that you can express what you want better. We haven't had any great problems, you know.
Good,
Um,
good. How about in brand work, that kind of protecting that human connection in this age of synthetics, because I know you've talked about real people with heartbeats in brand work. How do we hold on to that with deep fakes, voice clones, synthetic influencers?
I don't know. Um, you have to, what are brands? Brands are a human connection between one group of people and another. I did a film about this for our kids' school, and I was talking about that. To me, brands are not rules and manuals and, sort of generated stuff. They are kind of like a human conversation. And you always have to remember that with a brand. The spirit of the brand is in how it speaks to people. So to me, you need people to always have that in their hearts. You have to, sure, the AI can maybe manage the rules and the design a little bit, but it's in the simplicity and the words and the stuff that keeps it real.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if
connection.
that's a good answer or not, but I think brands are from people to people at the moment.
Yeah, fair. What's something that you prefer doing without AI? No rude
Uh,
answers.
I don't know really. I think you have to get lines down. You have to get thoughts down. You have to fail. I think a bit with creative. You need to talk about stuff and get yourself in a place. Well, what we're going to do and watch an idea grow and talk. I think once you get that, we had a little thing going yesterday. Was when a couple of ideas came out of fairly loose conversation, and I think you have to preserve that. And then you kind of do a bit of a dig and how do we imagine it, and you can almost like you're still setting up the bare bones of the idea, and then maybe then the AI can take over a bit, and I'm kind of like, with these two ideas we've got, I'd love to put it into the AI world just to see if it matches what's in my heart for
Yeah.
something, my imagination. Because I'm kind of hoping it'll come back. I'll say it's not like that. That's nothing like it. You know. Um, so I think it's still a human business. You know.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything you miss about pre-AI agency life?
Well, I was making a joke the other day. It's quite funny that, you know, when I were a lad, we used to do layouts in magic markers and do type and boards and colour them in and draw them. I used to love drawing the type. And um, we'd be colouring and sticking the stuff down on spray mount on boards as the client would be coming in to the reception. You know, last minute work, you know. We're still doing the same. You know, the technology has moved on 100 years, but we're still doing sort of, you know, little,
Last
you know,
minute.
decks and all that. Nothing has changed.
Yeah.
So to me, fundamentally, in a sense, the spirit of the business hasn't really changed.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
still a
Just moving
bunch of
on.
creative, we're still a bunch of young creative people having a good time, coming up with ideas, doing cool stuff, you know, and enjoying it. And I think you
No.
need to do that a bit.
Yeah. Whatever tools you use. I mean, what's the best piece of creative you've seen lately, whether it's been human or AI generated?
Um, the, there were two scripts for Cadbury's. This is a
Nice.
plug for the Cadbury's on TV, a TV ad, where the scripts were just great. And I always, you know, and I know they're great because my wife liked them. Therefore, they are great. And one of them was, it's quite old now, but you know, there's two little kids in a garden, and there's an old man who lives next door, and the little kids keep throwing the ball over the kicking the ball over the garden as kids do, and all year the old man keeps throwing the bloody ball back all the time to these annoying kids, you know. And then it's Christmas time, there's snow, and then what happens is the old man's in the garden, and a bar of Cadbury's chocolate gets thrown over the fence, and a little boy pokes his head up and says, "You don't need to throw that back, Mr. Jones, because it's a thank you." Now,
Oh,
that for me is still the work that I love the most. And I said, I think the creative team were kind of talking to me on LinkedIn about it, and I said, that's communication.
yeah.
So, you know, if you're asking me what work I was in my mind, that's it. That's the stuff that is in my mind.
Yeah.
You know,
That's the
you
best draft.
yeah.
Nice. And look, if you were to talk to, a room full of mid-career or older creatives now who are unsure about AI, what would you say to them?
Well, you know, mid-career is tough, isn't it? You're, forgive me, you know, you're no longer 25, you're 40 something, you know, and that's the point where, you know, your family might be a certain age, your income is, you know, getting serious, you need to get serious. I have been there. And actually, when I was there, I was actually freelancing and surviving and I wasn't really trying to reinvent myself, but it is a kind of slightly worrying point in your life, you know. What I would say to them is that's the point where you you need to be yourself. You need to have faith in yourself, and you need to know or discover why people will fundamentally use you. You know, and it's not actually about where you've been, although that's a part of it. It's what can you do for a bunch of people who want to hire you today. And sometimes that's about not thinking so much about all the general things you've done, but being a little bit hard nosed and almost taking your weaknesses and turning them into strengths. So, like me, I am a copywriter fundamentally, you know, and I get by more or less when I'm in a corner because I'm a copywriter. And like I said to you, I can write. I think I can write. I think I can art direct. I think I can film direct. You know, I think I can be a manager. You know, people would question all of those things. But I'm fairly sure that when the new business people or the planners, you know, they'll come to me because he can come up with an idea. Now when I was at that age, that's kind of what got me the gigs.
Yeah.
And I think you need to you do need to be a little bit brave, but you need to believe in yourself a little bit. You've survived this far. Why have you survived this far? Because you've been
Yeah.
good at something.
Well,
And I think that's I do love. I think all creative people have to believe in themselves and say, look,
yeah.
hey, even if it's going against you, stick to your guns a bit.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
find
I
a,
met you probably at that mid-career stage, didn't I?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
About 10 years ago or
See,
longer, I don't know. Yeah, 20 years ago,
find a
15.
Cheryl.
I
You know, the
know. And
other,
so I'd
you
love to
know,
hear like what's happened since then a little bit, just so that other people can, if they want to
I
follow
remember.
suit.
Well, I was in Asia. What was I doing? I was in Asia. I was a CD. We had our own place. We did quite well. I threw myself into the employment world. I was in the Middle East with agencies with Gray and people like that. Um, and I suppose in fairness, I was at Cheryl. I was kind of trying to find my feet a little bit. I didn't realise it at the time, and I wasn't actually worrying. I was just looking after the family, doing the work, and seeing where it took me. I didn't sit there, in all honesty, I didn't sit there and think, oh God, I'm bored, I need to do stuff. I didn't actually think about that. I just, I actually just enjoyed the sort of freedom of it a bit and the scariness of it, and I think as well, the point I was going to make is that, you need to find the people who will believe in you. Not everybody believes in you, and there's probably only in your career 3, 4, 5 people that get you.
That's an amazing point to make.
And you have to understand. I mean, there's loads of people that don't get me, and there's about 5 people even now, that know what I'm about, and you can't, what's the word? You can't discover them yourself. You just have to get involved. So I was kind of like trying to find my feet, feet a bit. I was just doing work, and eventually, I ended up in the US, which was a kind of temporary thing. I worked for a smallish agency, but we'd freelance with you and me and my art director freelance. We were in the Middle East, we were in Ireland, we were up and down the country. We were doing all sorts of things. It was great, enjoyed it. And along the way, I was offered a couple of jobs. One of which was a large regional job in a large and famous agency, and I turned it down, which my wife probably still hasn't forgiven me for. I came back to the US, and what happened there? And then I met Simon Martin, from Oliver. Oliver at the time was a, growing agency, quite small. And it was in the scary, funny days, crazy days of Shepherd's Bush.
J-Boo.
And Shibu, and there was an example of, Oliver was trying to be a certain thing. The thing about Oliver is, and it's still true today. It has a business model where a lot of agencies, are doing work. And that business model was about being on the inside and collaborating with clients and delivering work for them profitably. And I came along at a time where they needed a bit of ideas work. And, I think what had happened was, the Oliver model was the right thing at the right time because clients were needed more in-house. Internet was changing the amount of control clients had. They needed stuff faster, and we won a piece of business, and I was invited into the Oliver world, and those 100 people became 5,000.
Yeah,
In
incredible.
astonishing growth. And here we are,
Yeah.
now part of the Brand Tech Group. Somebody said to me the other day, they said, we've all got careers and you're just being you, which I like, you know.
Ideal, really.
Yeah, so, I'm a classic case of a, big agency-based copywriter, who freelanced in the middle of his career and ended up in a place with people that kind of understood my value.
And maybe all that
But
self-belief had something to do with that as well.
you have to stay in, you have to understand what you're about. I wouldn't be as confident to say, like, hey, self-belief, but yeah, I did know myself, kind of what I do best. Or another way of putting it is, I know what I don't do.
Yeah.
If you don't come to
You
me
know
for
what you're
your
not good at.
don't come for you for your timesheets or stuff like that.
Well, thought we'd wrap up on a few quick fire questions just to get to know you a tiny little bit. So, where would we find you outside of work, David?
Walking my daughter's dog, a cocker spaniel. We live
Oh,
out in Rutland, which is a very bucolic part of the world. So that, you know, going to gigs maybe
in a
with my
gig.
son. Yeah, my son is we're kind of, gig boys.
You
You
get
know,
Oasis tickets?
we went last night,
Did you?
Sunday
Oh my
night. We went
goodness,
on
how was
Sunday night.
it?
Ah, it was great. My son is a massive Oasis fan,
Yeah,
and he'd went, and my daughter felt left out, so me and my wife and my daughter went. Oh yeah, it was pretty good.
nice. Love it. Well, finally, what is your favorite AI tool and why?
Uh, at the moment, ChatGPT,
Yeah.
because I'm asking all sorts of questions of it.
What
You
should I have
know,
for breakfast? Doesn't count.
will Liverpool sign Isak, or what is the effect of Donald Trump's tariff stuff? I'm finding it a shorthand.
Yeah.
I'm not actually using it to do things for me. Funnily enough, I was using Firefly to muck around with visuals, my little sort of copywriter's type. So I'm not using AI to do things I can't do. I'm using AI to find things out
Yeah.
or to create visuals or stuff around my ideas. And maybe that's an interesting thing. I still believe, the idea is still coming from my imagination, and I'm not actually sitting there saying, write me an ad for a car or something. I'm not doing that. I'm
You're
saying,
not cheating.
and I'm not doing it consciously. I'm not sitting there saying, right, I refuse to cheat. I'm just using it. I think that's the copywriter in me, is just thinking of ideas and using AI to be a partner to it.
Yeah.
I think
Beautiful.
that's a good way of looking at AI, and I see it as a partner. I don't see it as either me replacing it or it replacing me.
Yeah. Just gives you more information to feed off, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. I don't sit there. I don't sit there and say, write me a headline. You know, not
How
yet
very
anyway.
dare you. Well, look, I
Right.
really appreciate you joining us today and for all your perspectives, and in particular, the advice for creatives on this crazy path at the moment where they don't really know how they're going to stay relevant in the world of AI, and all the advice you've given around that. So, thank you again.
Be yourself. Understand that none of us know anything. Don't think about it too much. One day at a time. That's what I'd kind of say. Be
Nobody knows what they're
yourself.
doing.
Be yourself.
Be
You know.
yourself.
Yeah.
All right. Well, peace out, D Shanks.
Thank you, Cheryl. See
You're
you soon.
welcome.
All
See you
right.
soon.
Bye now.